Welcome to another episode of A Rehab Diary, the series. And in today's episode, we're joined by Matt McKenzie. Matt, along with Jordan and Chris, run the Good Running podcast, which is a podcast and an educational platform based all around running. Matt, Jordan and Chris live on the Gold Coast and they help runners achieve goals, whether you're an amateur or on your way to an elite runner. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Alice, how are you going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well.
That's good. Matt and I were just talking earlier and I already got too carried away and started asking him all these questions. So I thought we better hit record and actually be able to share all of this amazing information with you guys. So Matt, I always start the podcast with the same question, and that is, what is mental resilience to you?
Wow. Yeah, mental resilience. I really think that I only can relate it into running. I think that's the best metaphor for it. And I think mental resilience is where you stay in the session, even though, you know, your mind really wants you to quit and jog it in. I think us as runners, we've probably quit running about 5 times during a hard session. So I think mental resilience is really being able to push forward, not think about the pain now, but think about how you're going to be after.
I think mental resilience too, when you relate it to running, it's bringing that mind and body together to achieve the desired outcome that you set out to achieve. And I think over time, with a lot of the runs that you have done, the really big runs, that you've probably surprised yourself in a sense of what your body's actually been capable to do, and how much more your mind is capable of as well.
Yeah, that's actually so true. I think it's, while I'm in training as well, I always think like there is no way that I'm going to be able to run anything close to this, like when it's time to race. But yeah, I think you said it perfectly, like being able to tap into your mind by the time you get to, like, you know, the end of a marathon or something like that, when things start to get hard, there is like a bit of a mind-body kind of link that you know, it doesn't end up being as bad as what you initially think.
Do you think mental resilience is something that you need to strengthen, or do you think it's something that comes with, I guess, being consistent in running?
I think it depends on the person. I think a lot of people will put themselves in, you know, positions where they need to be really, really resilient. I think I've been lucky enough in my life and in my training that I've had the opportunity to, you know, have things easier and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people will probably have to train for it, but a lot of people, it just comes naturally. I think a lot of people just, you know, quote, have that dog in them. And I think that is something that, you know, can't really be taught or learnt. It's just you can or you can't, but a lot of people learn to deal with it a little bit better.
With regards to that mental resilience that we speak about and how you've been able to, you know, do some of the runs you've had, building your business, building your podcast, do you feel that that's something that has naturally been in you all along?
Yeah, I think so. I also think that I probably train within my means, which maybe has benefited me in the past, and now it's harder to progress in my running. But I've always trained within my means so that, like, you know, if I've done things that are hard, I'm not doing it all the time. So it's quite easy for me to get through it. I think definitely in business and other parts of life, running does help, because I think, you know, if I ever have a bad day at work, I think, well, like, you know, I've got a 30K long run on Sunday. Whatever I'm doing now is not going to be as hard as what I've got coming up. Or like a hard session, or, you know, we deal in the Queensland heat. You'll know what it's like here. So we already think like, look, if we can run hard in summer, then the winter's going to be fine. Or, you know, I've got to go to work today, but I've just run 16K in the humidity here.
That's it. It's shifting that perspective. It can change it so much. So tell us a little bit more about your background and your coaching journey.
Yeah, so I wasn't always a runner. I think I used to play AFL on the Gold Coast for Carrara and for Palm Beach. Absolutely shocking at AFL. I think I was a culture hire. No one. I used to play not very well, but I just liked being out there and running around. Wasn't very good at running, but I lived away in Europe for a little bit of time, and it was while COVID was happening. And I think a group of us kind of thought, let's start doing something where we can, connect in a different way. There were already a couple of different runners there. So we all kind of just started running from there. I think that was like 2020 when we all started running. I think we had like who could run the fastest around one of the parks. So it was just like a little bit of a comp while we couldn't really hang out together. And then, yeah, I moved back to Australia and I enjoyed my running so much. I just kind of kept doing it on the side. And then I thought, oh, okay, like I'm really enjoying it. Let's keep going. And then, yeah, I randomly on a run one day, I thought like, oh, it'd be great to start like a run club from a brewery. Let's, get a little bit like of like-minded, let's get some like-minded people together. Let's go for a run. Let's have a chat after. And then it kind of just snowballed from there. We started the podcast, Good Running Podcast, talking about, how we can bridge the gap between the elites and the amateur runner with a couple of guys, Jordan and Chris, that I've grown up with. So then, yeah, I think the coaching side, I started coaching a couple of friends just as they asked, and I found that I really enjoyed it. My coach, Dave McNeil, has probably been the best person that I've learned from because he is one of the wisest minds in running, I think. And so I've taken like a lot of practical lessons from him that have kind of, trickled down into digestible training methods for other amateur runners as well. And yeah, I did my recreational running course and, just to make sure that I had it all kind of under wraps and that I was on the right track. And yeah, now I'm just kind of, the athletes come and go like between training blocks, but I have a few that have just kind of continued on that I ended up making a really good relationship with. And I think once you have like a friendship between like an athlete and coach, that's when it all kind of works together really, really well. So yeah, that's kind of me at the moment. I'm really enjoying it. I love coaching people. I think I get a lot of excitement and satisfaction out of seeing them all like do well, but also enjoy their running. I think at the end of the day, if you can enjoy what you're doing, you are usually going to be pretty good at it. So yeah, if I can keep that going further and, get better at the way that I do things and the way that people learn from me, then that's going to be a step in the right direction.
Amazing. And how important was it for you in your running journey, and I guess personally as well, to have a running coach?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I used to write a lot of, I don't know if you use Strava much, but I used to go on my Strava and I'd write notes on there just because I thought, oh, I'm not very good at keeping a journal. I might just start writing notes in my Strava. I can look back if I ever need to on these things. And I remember I noticed I was just kind of recycling workouts and I was recycling my runs and I was doing the same thing. And I remember I wrote, it was like December of 2022, I had written in one of my notes, I was like, maybe it's time to get a coach, like ... Would this help me ... It could be a good idea. And then I saw Dave McNeil, who is now still my coach, and I kind of had a chat with him and I thought like, this is great. This is exactly what I need. I need a second set of eyes. I need someone to make me accountable. I need someone to, tell me when I'm being a pussy, someone to tell me when I'm not doing things right, or, someone to put a leash on me if I'm going too overboard. So I think it's super important to have someone, if you're at that stage where you think maybe you can no longer progress, or maybe you're getting some little niggles and injuries, and maybe the love is kind of lacking. I think when you then can focus purely on, I just need to check something off, or I need to just get out for this session, having a coach can be really, really beneficial because it can protect the love of training, I think.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that also I find really interesting around coaching outside of providing you with that education and insight is also learning how they handle, difficult tasks, how they problem solve, how they show their own form of resilience. It's also something you can learn off and feed off as well.
Yeah, exactly. I like to tell my athletes that there's like never a stupid question. So anytime you have a question, even if it's like about a warm up or about a cool down or something, like if you don't know or if you are second guessing, there is no problem in asking the question, because it makes it better for me to be able to learn, like, okay, this is what maybe they need a little bit more help on, or maybe this is what they're, missing from their training.
Yeah, that's so true. So when we look at running, and you mentioned you sort of work from that level of amateur through to athletes, what do you find are some really common mistakes that athletes make when, let's say, starting their journey or progressing through, amateurs make when starting their journey or progressing through their journey?
I think the biggest mistake probably is doing too much. I think I did it as well. And I think I'm realizing now that I was doing too much. Like back when I was first starting out, I think it's super important to just take it slow, because running is one of those sports where you need to do the training, but you need to feel properly to adapt to the training, and then you need to rest for the adaptation to truly work. So I feel like if you're doing too much, if you're doing too much hard, if you're not doing enough rest, then you aren't ever going to make those adaptations or get any better. And I find that can then push you out of the sport, or it could push you to something else, or you might end up burning out or picking up like a pretty serious injury. I think you've probably seen it a lot, like a lot of overuse injuries or bone stress and stuff like that. And I think the most common mistakes are always doing way too much, way too soon.
I had a bit of a thought. I think we always ask certain types of questions in a sense of, how do we get more motivation, all those sorts of questions, right? But when you look at people that start running, and generally a lot of people that stick at it, my question to you is, how do you coach resting? Because I know for me as well, I struggle to rest, and especially when you are a passionate person or a driven person. So how would you coach somebody to rest?
Yeah, I think the athletes that I've coached have actually been so responsive in the way that maybe I explain it. I think you really have to explain why they need the rest. And I think, a lot of my athletes have been great because I program them through an app. And so they will literally see a rest day. So a lot of my athletes might think, well, if I don't have anything planned, I'm not going to do it. So I think it's a lot of it comes back to programming as well, and maybe being a little bit cautious instead of being risky can give the athlete a better idea of, okay, this is a good idea to rest. A lot of the times they want to rest because they've worked quite hard on, say, like a Tuesday session, or they've worked quite hard on a Friday or a long run. So it's automatically, they think, perfect, I get to look forward to a day off. That's how I try to, frame it, that if you work hard and then you get to look forward to a day off where you get to put your feet up. But I do appreciate that it's super hard when you're first starting, because you think, perfect, I can run every day, I can feel $1 million. And then you get 1 month in and you think, why do I feel like crap?
It's balancing load, and that load is also, it comes from many different aspects in your life. You've got your running specifically, your different types of runs, your mobility, your stretching, your rest, your life balance. You've then got your strength work. It's balancing load as a whole, never just one aspect.
Yeah, that, and I think that is probably one of the most important takeaways from like any type of, like, you know, running media, like wherever you're getting your running from, or running media from, or ideas about running. I think that's one of the most important takeaways is stress, no matter where it comes from. Our body doesn't essentially realize, you know, a 50-minute run or something compared to, you know, going and being stressed at work. And I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways that I've taken from working with Dave as like my coach is I never used to think of my training as a whole and my life as a whole. I'm on my feet all day at work. I never used to look at it like that. I used to look at it divided up into like work, family, training, but it all does intertwine together. And I think that's one major part that I'm learning now is if I've had a massive day at work, then my training needs to stop, or my training needs to be pulled back a little bit, because how can I expect my body to get over continuous stress if I'm continuously digging itself into a hole? Yeah, I think I'm starting to get a little bit more mature in that regard, that, you know, I can be stressed in my mind and that can affect me physically.
Exactly. It's understanding, I think, how your body responds to those different areas of stress, because sometimes what someone, you know, let's say a physical action that someone might undertake, for example, going for a run, it's a physical stress, but it might actually be a mental deload. So it's
Yeah.
understanding your body and how it operates, but also looking at going back to the basics of we are still a human body. So what I find as well is when you look at someone that works a desk job and they're sitting all the day, what's that doing for their hips, their glutes, their lower back? And then they're going to go straight out and go to a big run. So it's then balancing that out with our strength work, knowing that we have this kind of lifestyle. So stress and load, it's so holistic. So when it comes to, I guess, learning more about that, do you find it's been something that's been more prevalent in your coaching business that you've been starting to raise with your athletes as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so difficult from like an amateur perspective to, you know, divide it up, as I said. And a lot of the time, I'll have conversations with my athletes where it's like, okay, if you've had a massive day at work, I don't care. Like, your session can wait. There's another 6 days in the week. You're not running 7 days. So if you're not running 7 days, you don't have to be running 7 days. If you have a massive day at work on your feet, or if you've had a massive, like, you know, you've had a project that you needed to get finished, like if you work a desk job, then that mental load is going to be a lot. I coach people with kids as well. So having kids as well is a massive life stress and a massive load that you need to try and navigate as well. So yeah, I constantly having those chats as well, that take a break. It's not the end of the world. If you miss a run, it's not the end of the world. We can rejig it.
I think that really feeds into the importance of having a coach, is to provide that outsider perspective. I think a lot of people can have that inner dialogue that starts to kick in, you know, am I losing, you know, my drive? Am I doing enough? I think that really just feeds into the importance of having that educated person there to give some insight.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's that third party, like the outside voice, right? Like, it is so hard to have mental like chats with yourself to let yourself know that, like, okay, I'm exhausted, I need to have a rest. But unless you have that person on the outside that goes, okay, cool, I'm taking everything you're saying in and I'm doing the equation of what you have to do training wise, that means today has to wait, you know? And I think it's super important to be able to disconnect.
It does, and I think it leads into that space of burnout. So what do you find is some strategies that you implement with people, whether they're amateurs or athletes, when it comes to managing their burnout?
Well, straight away, I think for myself included, I think I've kind of been struggling a little bit lately with trying to navigate that. And, we wake up early, our training group's up early because, I work as an electrician, like a tradie, so I'm starting quite early as well. But other athletes as well, they have a family and work, so they're also up super early. But the best way is always, as I said as well, is to, skip it, push it to the next day or push it to the afternoon. I know sometimes they're not ideal to move around when you're not feeling great, but I think at the end of the day, once you hit that burnout feeling, or once you hit that like almost like stress beyond help, that's where running and training can become super dangerous, because you then find yourself, not fueling correctly, or you don't feel like eating. Maybe you get home from your session, you don't feel like fueling, and then that then goes into the next day, and it ends up snowballing and becoming like quite bad.
It's one thing that you said there about going into the next day, is that I think for some reason we think as soon as we go to sleep and wake up, our whole body resets to 100.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. You know, if you've had it trickles in over time, and it can be really confusing in that aspect.
Definitely. I think I can't remember if, you ever have one of those things where you can't remember if you kind of came up with the idea or if you heard it and then you've kind of meshed it into your own way. So this is completely, can't remember if I heard it somewhere or if I actually made it up. But I like to think of training as like a house. You build the foundation, which is laying a brick essentially. And if you look at the week of like 7 days and each day is a brick, and by the end of the week, you have a row of a wall. You're not going to have, you look at a house and every single brick never looks fantastic. There's always like a couple that maybe look a little bit scratched and a couple that are probably a little bit wonky, but, they all still form their place in the wall of the house. So I like to explain it like, you take a day off, that's still another brick. Or if you are training well, or if you train hard, that's a brick. If you rest, then that next day you're putting another brick in. So instead of focusing on one single brick, you take a step back and look at the whole line of bricks. So by the end of, say, your training block or your training year, you go and race, you get a PB, and you've put the roof on your house essentially. You've made that fitness home, so to speak. A weird metaphor, but when you when you're talking about laying a foundation of base training and stuff like that, I think when you step back and have a look, rest, recovery, fueling is all another brick in that fitness house, I guess. Fitness house.
I'll give you credit for it because you're an electrician, so I'm sure you did come up with that.
Well, it's probably regurgitated from somewhere, or it's probably something that Dave said to me along the years, and I've kind of been like, yeah, that makes sense. How can I add on to it?
But it does. I think that what I took from that is that whether you are like your training block, which would form your training year, is not, you don't only get a brick when you do the run, you get a brick by looking at it as a whole thing, and you can't actually have a stable foundation if you aren't incorporating those extra bricks. So to me, what it does is it means that the rest day that you take is meaningful, it's for a purpose, and it's going to feed into allowing you to lay that next brick. So as unique as the analogy was, it helps you form that idea of it's all important.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's one thing I've tried to get across to my athletes as well, as, some bricks look crap, but that's fine. Like, you put it down, you lay it, and you go to the next one. Like, don't stress about the one you've already put down, because that's going to affect your next day. And, us as amateurs, we can't afford to have we can't really afford to have stress extra stress, you know?
Exactly. And I think that's where when you're worried about or unnecessary worry in a sense, it doesn't need to be there. It's something that, like you said, only prevents the house from probably building further.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm glad that that got across.
No, I actually really like that analogy. So that's interesting. But I guess feeding into that foundation and is, I guess, strength. How important is strength training for your runners?
I think it's super important, and I think it's probably the first thing to go when, you know, it's when we are. I know for me myself as well. It's probably the first thing that we lack on. And yeah, it's all about being able to, you know, maybe even skipping a run to add in a gym session or something like that. I know how important it is. And usually the runners that I coach are usually pretty good. They are able to, you know, fit in a strength session, or a lot of the time it's probably not the most ideal, but they get something done at home, which is still something in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I think strength training is super important. I think I lack on that a lot. One of our training partners, he has started a you know, like a bit of a Wednesday training group strength session that we can all go to, so we can all get a little bit stronger and help our running performance, because, you know, strength training and sleep are probably the biggest helpers in running performance, rather than, like, you know, shoes and stuff like that.
How did it elevate your running personally?
I think I was getting injured less. So when I started strength training, when I start into like a bit of a marathon block or something like that, I know it's the first thing to go, which is so bad because it needs to stay at the top of my mind. But I did feel like when I do strength train consistently, it offloads so much. You don't feel as weak. You feel way more bouncier during your easy runs, which I feel like, and you know, at the back end of your longer runs and hard workouts. So much benefit there. I know it makes me a better runner as well.
Do you find when it comes to your strength training sessions, as a runner, do you find you prefer more full body sessions? Do you prioritize lower and upper? Is there any, I guess, tips that you have around amateur runners looking to maybe start integrating a bit of strength into their program?
I think like running, you know, don't overthink it, and don't put too much pressure on it. There are some key exercises you can do, like, you know, for lower body, like calves, quads, squats, like glutes, lower back, a lot of things that can help you with your running performance, but don't put too much pressure on how much of the strength training you're doing. It's usually you can get away with, you know, heavy and lower reps. But I think you just have to get there. You just have to. I know us as runners as well, it's probably the last thing we want to do. Like I go into the gym now and sometimes I walk around and I think, gee whiz, I am so weak compared to all these people. Like my upper body is so weak now. But I think, I think for a tip, I think as well, if you can go with other people as well, that number one thing to do. But in terms of exercises and stuff like that, a lot of focus to be done on your calves and glutes, and, you know, you can kind of work in from there as long as you have those main sets done.
Before we jump back into the episode, I just want to take a moment to share our sponsor, an app I genuinely use and absolutely love, and that is My Meal Plan. Now, when it comes to rehabilitation, nutrition plays a huge role in injury recovery. It supports tissue healing, helps manage inflammation, prevent issues going wrong, preserve muscle during periods of reduced activity, and supports strength gains as you start to load your body again. Now, protein itself is particularly important during our rehab, and it's something I see people struggle with when life feels so overwhelming. I think when it comes to our rehabilitation, nutrition either tends to fall by the wayside, or we feel we shouldn't focus on it because we are trying to recover from an injury, illness, or surgery, when in actual fact, our body is a giant piece of muscle and we need to be nourishing it and putting it in an environment where it's able to heal and grow and to get stronger in the best way it possibly can. So My Meal Plan is an affordable, easy to use app that provides structured, evidence-based meal plans, making it so much easier to fuel your body properly without overthinking it. What I personally love is that it helps you repurpose foods you've already brought or cooked into different meals, so it saves time and reduces food waste. When you download the app, you'll receive a simple guide to help you get started straight away. You can work with your doctor or your therapist to choose the right plan in which allows your body to adapt, get stronger, recover, and heal in the best way it possibly can. Going through recovery is hard, but these are the things you can control. My Meal Plan is an app that allows you to hit your strength, growth, and recovery gains, all whilst making sure your body is the most physically and healthy version of itself. So download My Meal Plan today. The link to the app will be in our show notes. Now let's get back to the episode. I think it's when you build that level of strength. Let's say you started running, you integrate your strength training into your running. I know for me, when I integrated strength training into my sport, I felt a difference. Like you said before, you feel bouncier, you feel like you can absorb the load, produce the load at maybe, 50% less effort. And when you feel those shifts and changes in your body, it feeds into, I guess, that almost that motivation. I don't really like that word, but it feeds into the motivation of I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right track. I know that I'm making progressions in the thing that I want to, which is my running, and this really feeds it.
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're feeling good on a run, you're like, okay, cool, I'm invincible. This is great. Like the love is really there. And I think strength training 100% helps towards that. It really gives you a bit more, pep in your step, like literally and like figuratively. You do feel better and you think, okay, cool, I will keep this going because it's the one thing that's helping me, as much as I think I saw a study the other day and it can, decreases your injury risk by like 50%. I know the study was done on not a massive group, but, it's being able to help not just with your running itself, but actually with injury prevention.
Yeah, and the quality of your tendons, your tendon adaptation. And I know with runners, there is just sort of speaking on studies for a second. They did a study looking at like runners' tendons compared to weightlifters' tendons. Now, again, two different sports requiring two different types of force and volume and movement patterns. However, what they found with the weightlifters was that they had their tendons were a lot thicker compared to a runners, but the runners had a lot more of the endurance-based side of a tendon. So being able to get that beautiful, happy medium or strive for that is, I think, where you can really optimize your performance.
Yeah, of course. And that's all going to come from consistency in the gym, right? And I think we might jump for like a collagen protein or something before we go into the gym to build our tendons. And, plyometrics for runners are like probably one of the best things we can do as well. And plyometrics don't have to be much as well. Plyometrics can be pretty short and sharp, but they can be done often to help with that tendon as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to, I guess, feeding into, again, I don't like that word, I'll say that again, but the motivation side of things is how do you navigate that working with amateurs versus working with athletes?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be, a lot of the time I think motivation comes from within, and I think that you can't tell someone to be motivated. You can't tell someone that they need to be disciplined, because I feel like that will always come from within. And it's really easy for someone to tell you to do something, to try and be your motivator. And, you can just automatically think, yeah, well, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. I think a lot of the time I like to talk with my athletes about, and I think even myself, that if you do have a motivation dip or something like that, just think that the discipline needs to take over now. And in the long run, you will have more success by maybe dropping a little bit of the thought of I have no motivation, relying on discipline, and you will still get the same outcome. It might sound a little bit like you're, not focusing too much on the love, but I feel like to stay motivated 100% of the time is super difficult. And I think when you can decide and, differ between motivation and discipline, that is when you can still be consistent and still see the results you're looking for. So I think, in a really roundabout way, I like to just chat with my athletes about like, okay, let's make a plan for how you're feeling now, but just remember when it's time for your race or when it's time for, your session or your time trial, you will feel a lot better if you are just ticking off the days now.
Do you feel that motivation shifts for a reason? So, for example, if somebody, something's changing in their life or they are struggling with a bit of fatigue, like, do you feel motivation is almost like a symptom for something else going on? Or lack of motivation being, a symptom for something?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can have a bad run and your motivation can dip. I think the minute, you aren't consistent with something, or if your discipline lacks, your motivation will dip. And I think it's hard because we try to fit so much into our lives, runners, amateurs, because, we don't get paid for this. We don't do this full time, that it's hard to focus on the little things that are going to make us feel better and, bring our motivation up, like fueling. I touched on it earlier, but the minute you're not fueled correctly to run or to train properly, that your run will not be as enjoyable, which I feel like that is a direct correlation with a motivation dip. And I always try to, tell my athletes and even the people that we train with, we always try to, talk about like how we can do these little things around our training that can help with motivation. So yeah, I think motivation dips definitely come from everything else that happens around the running. And it's unfortunate that you then go for a run and you feel like crap and you think, oh, my motivation's gone. I'm sick of it. Like, I don't want to get out the door. Yeah. Sometimes the hardest thing can just be, putting your shoes on and walking out the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find that with the boom that running has had over the past year to 2 years, and then the amount of content out there around running and this pressure of almost having to do it perfectly, do you feel that can feed into the way in which somebody mentally frames their motivation towards running?
Definitely. I think the content side and everything is good and bad. I think obviously it's like a well-known thing, everything always looks way better on, Instagram than it really is. And, we share like the best parts of ourselves. We don't share the worst, but I think it can be really good to use that as motivation, like coming across content online. Someone's maybe run it. I think I've done it in the past as well. I've seen it, been like, oh, that's motivating because if I'm seeing them doing it, like I think I could do that, But then I think when you start to compare, that's when it can become quite detrimental, where you think like, oh, I've seen this person do this, I can do it. But then if you try and it doesn't work out, then you think, oh, that sucks. How come I can't do it? Motivation dip, training stops, consistency ceases. And then, that's where it can be quite bad for like your overall stress. But I think it's good and bad, the amount of content that's out there. We've tried to start, posting a little bit more about like how our sessions go, talk about how hard they are, because usually they are quite difficult and we don't always hit our paces. I think I recently spoke on our podcast that I did a session by myself, and I think I quit running every rep. Every single rep, I thought, this is my last rep. I'm quitting running. So yeah, it can be really, really good. But I think, yeah, if we have, those content creators and stuff, the ones with a lot more pull, talking about like how bad a session was and how their motivations dipped, I think we're starting to see a little bit more of it now. But, if that was if that lined up better with us as amateurs, it might make things a little bit more friendly.
Yeah, of course. So I guess from that, would you have any advice around what are some things that amateurs shouldn't copy or shouldn't do when they are looking at all this, content or information online? What would be some of your tips around?
Yeah, I think myself and us as a training group as well, you see a lot of content about like, if you want to get faster over the 5K or 10K, do this session. Or this was the session that helped me run X for the marathon. And I think that's really dangerous because we don't know you as an athlete. You can't, it's like having an AI training app. There's no nuance. I don't know this person, how they conduct themselves for the other 7 days of the week. And so now I automatically think if I can go and run this 5K session, that means that I'm in good stead to do something else. Then if it doesn't turn out right, then that's like, okay, well, or if you blow up in the session or, I think the minute we start to copy things we see online without a better idea of who this athlete is, that's when, you can run into problems with injuries and all of that type of stuff that, we've probably spoken about, like motivation and everything like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it really feeds into what you said before about comparison.
Yeah.
Is it can really start to feed that inner voice, which further takes you away from your program plan or your end goal that you're wanting to achieve, or maybe even just the longevity that comes with running. Sometimes I say to people, there's always tomorrow. Like the things that you're doing now, you probably actually want to do for the rest of your life to some degree. So how do we achieve that longevity? And sometimes it can really shut people off straight away because they lose that, I guess, that feeling of I'm doing something right or I'm on the right path, or I never feel like I'm going to achieve something because I'm not on the right path.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can also see like a video online and someone is saying, oh, I did this session and now I'm going to do this marathon. I'm going to do this. And it's fun to follow along, but I feel like you can definitely take, you said it like, again, like comparison to think like, oh, well then I can do it. I need to start doing all of this so I can do what they're doing. But it's hard to see all the other work behind the scenes, how they conduct themselves, how they sleep, how they eat. I know a lot of people will probably post it as well, but there's always going to be a little bit of difference of everything that they share online.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, Matt, with your experience with regards to some of the runs that you've done, if somebody was starting out in their journey and they had the goal to run their first marathon, what is some, I guess, realistic advice that someone may, counter along the way, or when it comes to running that first marathon that sometimes we can just glamorize in a sense of achieving that, but what's some realism that you would bring to a person's journey who's looking at achieving that?
Yeah, I think, the main thing is probably start slow. And I know sometimes it can be opportunities can arise, like there's a marathon in July and you've only just started running, but you have this opportunity to run this marathon. It's a fantastic idea. I want to do it. I see a lot of people doing it. Why not? I always think that can vary person to person. You can definitely train enough to do that marathon or said, but I always think like if someone thinks, or if they come in to say, I want to do a marathon this year, and if you look back through their training and you have an idea, then sometimes the marathon isn't the first thing to look at. I think you said it as well. The marathon's been glamorized. Everything about the marathon, it sells out. The shoes, the fit, everything looks fantastic about a marathon because, so many people are doing them, but a lot of the time, what these runners and things, these runners and people coming to for the first time, they probably just need a 5K race or a 10K race, still being a part of the weekend, but not trying to jump into something that is so physically hard, not just the marathon, but the training to be comfortable at a marathon is really demanding. Not just the training, but we've spoken about too, like in your everyday life. So I think if someone is ever thinking about a marathon, I think when you start thinking about the marathon, then look to the next year, because obviously it's depending on how your training is and everything like that. But if you want to plan for a marathon, give yourself 12 good months of learning the base training, building a foundation, because at the end of the day, if you try to rush a marathon or, an ultra marathon or something like that, it could ruin the love for it. And, you spoke about longevity. You'll have no longevity because you'll have the worst time ever. But if you are to give yourself 12 months, it's a way, way better time.
I think it just really feeds into enjoying the process of like building your body and learning to love the sport. And I heard something the other day, it would be interesting to get your take on this. And it was like to do with, do you do something and stick at something and become good at something because you love it? But 9 times out of 10, you might be interested in it. And then you put in the time and effort, you actually don't like it because it's really uncomfortable or it takes a lot of effort and time and you've got to adapt. So you can't rely on the love for something during that sticky period of growth. But then when you actually start being successful, it feeds back into, I do really enjoy this. Have you ever felt that before?
Yeah, all the time. We probably joke about it probably more than we should in our training group. Like we say like, running sucks. Like, why do we do this? We don't get paid for it. We're getting up so early to do these ridiculous sessions that are really, or sometimes we're going to bed for the rest of the day. So, but I think at the end of the day, when you look back after you've done the run, you're like, oh, look, it wasn't too bad. I got to spend 2 hours with my mates. Yeah, we hurt a little bit, but we're going to be better off for it. And then, you run a marathon in however long after that run, and you think, okay, perfect. Like, I picked up a few lessons from that, how much I hated that run, to now, I've run a PB over, not even a marathon, over any type of distance. You've run a PB, and you don't even think about the times you hated the run or the training, because it's almost like delayed gratification to a certain point, because you've done what you tried to do, and the training got you there.
Exactly. Do you feel, what are a few key skills you've learnt that you've taken from running and implemented into navigating the growth of your business and podcast?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I always think, like, if it's bad, it'll pass. If there's a lull, it'll pass. If there is, if you're having a bad day, it'll pass. It's quite easy to hate everything when you're underfueled on a long run halfway through, and then it's quite easy to not enjoy your day when you're dealing with a hard job or something like that. But we always make a joke, that there's that meme. It's like tough times never last, and I feel like they don't. They come and they go, but they are always. I don't take too much, growth from tough times. Like, I don't think, oh, this is going to make me a tougher person, but I just think, you can endure more. You'll be able to endure more when the bad times are gone, and you are, enjoying the good times. They're nowhere near as bad.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I think in business as well, and I don't know if you ever find this, but life doesn't stop either. Like life is going to throw
Mm.
crazy curveballs and turn upside down, but you've still got the responsibilities of your commitments, but then also the business and then, maybe employees on top of that. So it's like that ability to, or I guess when everything's kind of compounding, to go back to like it will pass at some point can make it somewhat easy to cope with and navigate through, because it's not, you can rely on the fact that you don't have to solve every problem right now like your brain is trying to.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to take a step back, when you're in business and stuff like that, to be appreciative of, how far you've come, or to look towards the future and think, it is going to get better. But it is difficult at the time. But I guess running's probably helped with that, in a sense of, no matter how bad, there's going to be some sort of joy at the end of it.
I think that kind of feeds into like that delayed gratification you were speaking about before, is your ability to remain in that space no matter how uncomfortable or unfulfilling it is at the time, to know that it's for something more and bigger than you're probably able to comprehend at that stage.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think before I ran like my marathon PB, I was having trouble just jogging, and I was thinking it's going to be worth it when you run this time. Like I spoke to myself about the time that I wanted to run for probably like 6 months. Every morning I was running, being like, it's going to be fine. You're going to run this time. Don't worry. You're going to be fine. Don't stress at all, which is, I don't know, probably naive, but maybe it fed into, coming off because I spoke about it so much to myself.
Yeah, that's so true. So I guess that sort of brings me into the last part of the podcast, the last question. Where do you see the growth of your coaching business, your podcast, you as an endurance runner, the community that you're trying to build? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, it's a good question. I really just want to keep, like, our community. Our community is great at the moment. Like, we have people who have, we get messages about, everyday things that we do. Like, we speak on the podcast, people talk about that or share our inside jokes or stuff like that. And I think I just want that to become a bigger audience. I think it's great having this kind of community on the backside, like even towards like Strava, and you have people commenting on your runs that have followed your journey. And I think it's just amazing, because that itself is a little bit of motivation. But no, I think I really just want to keep growing the podcast, and, coaching is fine. We don't really advertise too much about the coaching, because we like to, we do enjoy doing it, but we're kind of like probably a little bit of imposter syndrome, where we think, but why would people listen to us? Like, why do people listen to what we have to say? Why does it stop with us? So probably grow that, to have more athletes and across all three of us, and to build it to a stage where people are coming to us for some like running recommendations, or they're coming to us for some training tips, and they're coming to us for a laugh. I think at the end of the day, we like to do everything in a little bit of jest. So if people can listen to our podcast, we can get some great guests on to subsidize the laughs with some actual factual help. Then I think we'll be doing pretty well. Yeah. Of course, I'd love to not be an electrician for the rest of my life, but maybe might have to become like an actor or something before a podcast star.
No, I think you're definitely on the right track. I think with, I guess, the movement you are making with the podcast and the coaching business, it's really hard sometimes to, when you're a coach of some sort, in a sense, a service for someone to help them achieve something, there is the one limiting factor, and that's time. And having the podcast associated with what you're doing is almost like a library you're forming. Like, you've got your fitness house, now you've got your fitness library.
Yeah.
Like, it's a library that you're forming that has everything that they need at different points of their journey. And maybe it's, you know, go back and recheck out this episode. Maybe it's the voice, just listening to your voice as they're running. It's a space in which you can be there to support them, you know, more than just your contact hours. So I think it's really providing that platform where they also can see how you think and how you process, and then how you put that into plan with what you do with your business and your podcast. So it's, I think that space, that the way in which you're approaching it from a bunch of different angles is really unique and authentic compared to a lot of educational running platforms that are out there trying to achieve that instant, you know, catch, that instant hook in that instant person with zero depth to it. So I think there's definitely movements that you're making within what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's probably the main thing, you know, is how can we share how we run to make, you know, people feel like, you know, they're not alone. And, you know, making not alone sounds a little bit deep, but I mean, like, not alone, you know, sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, and sometimes things click, and sometimes it's the hardest thing in the world. So, you know, it's hard to get that from, you know, it's hard to get that from just the facts or from just elites, because they do it full time. They don't have any other stress. So yeah, hopefully we can continue to grow in that aspect, that, you know, and I feel like sometimes it's nice because someone might message you, or, you know, an athlete will call me after hearing an episode and they'll be like, oh, you just said this on the podcast. Should I do that? Or what does this mean? So it actually answers questions for them as well, as you said about the, you know, the fitness library.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing with coaches that people see through very quick, which I think is really changing, is if you come into it as a coach thinking and expressing and kind of acting in a sense that you know everything, people will see through that really quick, because it changes constantly, and all knowing everything does is shutting your blinders off to the new things that are coming through that we're learning about. So I think having that space that's continuously growing, and from an education point of view, is really, really unique. So I have zero doubt that, you know, your electrician days will be probably something you do as more of a hobby than anything, because yeah, it's good to see what, you know, the changes that you are making in that space between that amateur and athlete.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I think with a lot of athletes as well, you know, you try to be a friend. You're a friend first. Like, if you can't tell someone how to train or how to eat, or, you know, talk about taboo things like, you know, I have a couple of female athletes about their cycle. Like, you're not going to talk about that unless you're like their friend, right? So, you know, you be a friend first, and then you can help teach someone how to run or how to take a rest day, you know?
I think one thing that comes from that relationship with your coach, and what you said about a friend, is that what comes with that is respect and trust, but not trust in a sense of something visual. I find with me, you can listen to so many different things, but you only hear things that you truly relate to, or truly understand, or feel, or respect. And when you have that, that's where it feeds into the behaviors and forms the patterns that are new, that you're learning, that are actually sustainable for a longevity point of view.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, you see a lot of online coaches. Like, I try to catch up with my athletes. I catch up with my athletes like once a month, but I say, like, always message me. If you have a question, message me. I'll get back to you. Send me a voice memo. Like, if you have something else going on, like, I know there's a lot of coaches that it's all online, like all text or all email, where I feel like you can't really find too much out about someone unless you talk to them and figure out what's going on, where you can ask more than just running or training questions.
It's it's so true. It's personal, and it takes away then the pressure, like the added unnecessary pressure that just doesn't help somebody grow.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, you don't get seen as like a person. It's just like, okay, do this training, you'll be fine. Where it's like, well, yes and no. So yeah, I agree with that.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, for coming on. We really appreciate everything you've been able to give all of our guys. And we'll put all of your details in the podcast information at the bottom so that they all know where to find you and follow you and, really start to become part of a community. Because like you said before, that space around endurance running and building a community and support, it really does feed into, I think, the love that you can have for that industry. So thank you so much for sharing so much insight with us today.
No, thank you very much. It's different to be on this side of the mic. So yeah, thank you for having me. I've had a good time.
A Rehab Diary. This series